Hello everyone, and welcome to this video. It's called 5 Ways to Play Loudly. It's a ukulele tutorial and it's one of a series. It's number 3 in a series of videos called 5 Ways, and each tutorial gives you a different set of techniques to improve the way that you play, improve the sound that you make. These videos have got nothing to do with the quality of instrument that you use or the strings that you use, or whether you plug into an amplifier or not. The videos are concerned really with when you're playing in public with yourself, or with just by yourself or with others, or when you're just playing for your own amusement. So here's the third of these videos, 5 ways to play loudly. So number one is to play more strings. Now you might think, well, I have 4 strings, how can I play more? Well, you can. Let's just examine how we strum. I'll just take a chord of F. Okay, so it doesn't matter how I play it, I can just do down strokes or down, up, but I'm only playing 4 strings at a time. There is a way of playing more than 4 strings, and because of that, increasing the volume that you produce. And it's to do this. I'm going to start by using 2 fingers, and I'm going to play 2 strings. First of all with this finger, and then with the index finger. Middle finger, then index finger. Now they're held closely together. So in effect we're playing 8 strings, though of course the string is repeated very quickly. So we don't get twice the volume, but we do get considerably more volume. This technique, by the way, is a very good way of starting the song. You know, just at the very beginning of a song, it makes it sound started. Or for playing the first beat of each bar. Now, it gets a little bit boring if you do it too often, but that is a way of producing more volume on your ukulele. You can, of course, use 3 fingers, and this would mean that you're using your index finger, then your middle, then your first finger. So you hold them together like that. And the movement is the fingers. It's not really the arm at all. Your arm doesn't move, or very slightly. And your hand does a rotating movement. But the main action is from the fingers. You can even go to extremes and use 4 fingers, and even put a thumb in afterwards. But that is really going to extremes. But this is one way of, this is the first way I'm going to tell you about, of producing more volume on your instrument. So I play a song called Knocking on Heaven's Door, and it's in the key of G, and I always start it with I think it's a 3-fingered strum I usually do. Okay, and there we heard, I think I played it 3 times, I used my 3 fingers. Most importantly, at the very beginning of the song. You can do that with any song. Number 2, play more notes. Now at its simplest, this could just mean play a more complex strum. So let's imagine that you're playing the verse of the song like this. Very simple strum, but let's imagine in the chorus you wanted to do something slightly different. You could do something perhaps like this. With that down, up, down technique. So that automatically produces more notes, and it gives the impression of more volume, and in fact it actually does produce more volume because you generally playing the instrument with a little bit more force anyway, but playing more notes. Now this works also when you're finger picking. So let's imagine you're doing a very simple finger pick in a very simple song. Let's take a lullaby. Hush, little baby, don't say a word. Papa's gonna buy you a mockingbird. Now that, sorry about the note at the beginning, but that sounds very gentle. But if we take that same strum, I'll do it in a different key and do it rather more quickly, so we're playing a lot of notes to the bar. Again, it gives the impression of more volume, and because you're playing more notes, you actually get more volume. So here's a song by U2. I've climbed highest mountains, I have run through the fields only to be with you, only to be. So there we have a complex strum which sounds loud. I'm actually plucking the notes quite loudly as well. But playing more notes will certainly give the impression of more volume as well as actually producing more volume because you're playing actually more notes. So that's number 2. Number 3. You can actually hit the instrument harder. Now this isn't as simple as it sounds. Let's take, for instance, let's take just plucking the notes first. Now if you're doing a finger pick like I did in the previous example, it's actually quite hard to produce a loud sound. It does take practice. It can be done. But let's imagine you're playing more of a melody. That will sound much louder if you play it with your thumb rather than a finger. Or if you use the rest stroke, which is where you play the string, and your finger rests on the string that's vertically above the one you've just played, or next to it, the next string. I'm overdoing it a little bit there, but you see what I mean? I'm playing that and my finger rests on the string that's this way. So there's one possibility with making more volume by hitting it harder. I'm not actually hitting it, I'm playing the notes. But what about actually hitting it physically harder? Well, on any musical instrument, when you play an extremely loud note, it has a different tone to when you're playing a softer note. A good example would be the saxophone. If you blow very gently into a saxophone, you get a very gentle, sweet sound, any size saxophone. But if you blow hard, the reed vibrates in a slightly different way. It vibrates harder and it produces a slightly more strident, harsh sound. The same is true on a flute. Flute doesn't have a reed, but if a flute can sound very sweet if played softly, it can sound very whistle-like, very quite harsh if played very loudly. And the same is true on an instrument with frets, like the ukulele or a guitar. Here's some notes played softly. And here they are played very loudly. We get a thumping sound. And it's because of the way the string is causing the rest of the instrument to vibrate, and also the movement of the string itself. Sometimes it catches on the fretboard. But certainly you can just adjust your style of playing to make the volume louder just by playing it a little bit harder. Same is true of strumming, or. The two sound different. It's not just a matter of volume, it is a matter of a tone change. So hit the instrument harder, play it with more force, play it with more effort, and you'll get a louder sound. That's an easy one. Number 4. This is again a very simple one. Use more instruments. Let's suppose you're not playing on your own, but are playing with somebody else or with several other people. You can create very interesting dynamic contrasts of volume, by only having some instruments playing some of the time. So for instance, a very common thing is to start a song with just one player or one instrument playing. There may be others singing, and then other instruments join in later. This often happens in a recorded song when, if there's a band playing, it might start with just a guitar, for instance, and then something else comes in, and then in the chorus perhaps the drums come in with the bass. A song you might want to listen to that does this is the song Let It Be. That begins with just piano, then I think we get a cymbal coming in, and then I think it's bass coming in next. And each time a new instrument comes in, the volume changes, the volume increases, the feeling of volume changes as well, because we get a more broad spectrum of notes. So using more instruments can produce very interesting effects with the volume of the piece of music. You can also have interesting effects by only playing, for instance, only all of you playing, if there's, let's say there's 3 of you playing, only playing in the chorus, and have one instrument playing in the verse. It gives you contrasts of volume, also contrasts of tonality as well. The actual sound that you're getting varies. So it makes the song much more interesting. So the simple technique here is just use more instruments to produce more volume. And number 5. This is an interesting one in that most people, when they strum, tend to strum with down and up strokes, at least some of the time. So for instance, let's just go to a chord of G. Down, down, up, down, down, up, down, down, up. And very often you find yourself playing just down, up, down, up, down, up through the whole bar. Okay, but if you come to a bit where you want to change chords, it's quite interesting to change the strum. I'm not a big fan of strumming patterns. I don't like to hear the same strumming pattern played throughout a song. I think it can sound really silly. But you can certainly use a pattern for most of a song or for a phrase. And then at the end of a phrase, let's suppose you're doing 2 bars and then you go to change chords. So I'm going to go from the chord of G to the chord of C. And I'm going to lead into the chord of C by just doing down strums. That last one slightly, but you get the idea. When doing down strums gives you a little more force, you'd naturally play louder, and that sort of thing, that sort of technique as an introduction, for instance, sounds quite interesting just using down strums. So just down strums produces a nice rhythmic effect, because the down strums do sound different to the up strums. Often the up strum is just to catch the strings, not necessarily all of them. But doing a down strum, you're playing all the strings. Naturally, you'll get more volume. So that's the 5th technique. Thank you for listening to this video. I hope you've enjoyed it, and if you have, please leave comments. I answer all the comments. Please leave comments, give it a thumbs up or a like, and subscribe, ring the bell icon, and thank you for listening. I look forward to seeing you in the next 5 Ways video. Thank you. Bye bye.